The gunshot echoed across the barren landscape as Elias Dawson's horse skidded to a halt at the edge of the railroad tracks. It was 1875, and the vast Wyoming territory stretched before him like an endless sea of dust and promise. He squinted against the setting sun, watching as the locomotive thundered past, black smoke billowing from its stack. That's when he saw it, a woman's body tumbling from the rear carriage, a flash of lavender dress against the harsh terrain. Whoa, phantom. Elias pulled the reins, redirecting his stallion toward the motionless figure. His heart pounded beneath his weathered denim jacket as he dismounted, spurs jingling in the sudden silence left by the departing train. The woman lay crumpled among the sagebrush, her chestnut hair spilling across her face. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, and her fine traveling dress, clearly not meant for the rugged Wyoming wilderness, was torn at the shoulder. Elias knelt beside her, gently brushing the hair from her face. She couldn't be more than 25, with delicate features that seemed out of place in this unforgiving land. Her eyelids fluttered and she gasped, attempting to sit up before falling back with a pained moan. "Easy now, miss," Elias said, his voice softened from its usual gruff tone. "You've had quite a fall." Her eyes, the color of spring violets, widened with fear as she took in his appearance, the dusty hat, the week-old stubble, the revolver holstered at his hip. Who she began, then winced, touching her forehead. "The train, I saw," Elias assured her, offering his canteen. "Someone threw you from that train. Question is, who'd want to do that to a lady like yourself?" She took a careful sip of water. "My name is Lily Harrington." Her voice gained strength with each word. "And if they discover I survived, they'll come looking for me." Elias helped her to a sitting position, noticing her wince as she moved her left arm. "Well, Miss Harrington, seems you've got yourself in a heap of trouble. That train's headed to Silver Creek, about 2 days' ride from here." Lily attempted to stand but swayed dangerously. Elias caught her by the waist, surprised at how small she felt in his calloused hands. "I need to get to Silver Creek," she insisted. "Everything depends on it." Elias looked at the distant plume of smoke from the departing train, then back at the injured woman. He'd been avoiding Silver Creek for 3 years now, ever since the incident with Judge Holloway. Going back meant risking his neck, but leaving this woman alone in the wilderness meant certain death. He made his decision, lifting her carefully onto Phantom's saddle. "I'll take you the rest of the way." Lily's eyes widened. "You don't understand the danger." "I understand danger just fine, Miss Harrington," Elias replied, swinging up behind her. "Been living with it most my life." As the sun sank below the horizon, painting the landscape in hues of orange and purple, Elias guided Phantom toward a small outcropping of rocks. It wasn't much, but it would provide shelter for the night. Lily had fallen silent, occasionally shivering against him despite the warm evening air. "We'll rest here," he announced, helping her down from the saddle. Her legs buckled and he caught her again, lifting her easily into his arms. "You need food and rest before we can continue." Lily stiffened at his touch but didn't protest as he carried her to the shelter. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the evening breeze. "Most men would have left me there." Elias set her down gently on his bedroll. "I ain't most men, Miss Harrington." Within minutes, he had a small fire crackling, the flames casting long shadows against the rock face. From his saddlebags, he produced jerky, hardtack, and a tin of coffee. "It ain't much," he apologized, handing her a portion, "but it'll keep your strength up." Lily accepted the food gratefully. "You haven't told me your name." Elias Dawson." "Are you a lawman, Mr. Dawson?" A humorless smile crossed his face. "No, madam, just a man trying to make his way." He didn't elaborate, and something in his expression discouraged further questions. They ate in silence, the crackling fire and distant coyote calls the only sounds in the vast emptiness surrounding them. Elias noticed Lily struggling to stay awake, her head nodding forward before she'd jerk upright again. "You should sleep," he said finally. "We've got a long ride tomorrow." "I can't impose on your bedroll. You ain't imposing if I'm offering." He stood, shrugging off his jacket and draping it over her shoulders. "I'll keep watch." Lily looked as though she might protest, but exhaustion won out. She lay down, pulling his jacket tighter around her slender frame. Mr. Dawson, she murmured, already half asleep, why are you helping me? Elias stared into the fire, considering the question. Some things a man just does because they need doing, he answered finally, but Lily had already drifted off, her breathing deep and even. He watched her sleep, wondering what kind of trouble she was in. Who would throw a woman like her from a moving train? And what awaited them both in Silver Creek? The night grew cold, stars appearing like diamond dust scattered across the vast Wyoming sky. Elias remained vigilant, his hand never straying far from his revolver. Whatever danger pursued Lily Harrington, it would have to go through him first. Morning arrived with the harsh clarity unique to the high plains. Elias had allowed himself brief snatches of sleep, always waking alert at the slightest sound. He was brewing coffee when Lily stirred, her face softened by sleep yet marked by a purple bruise forming at her temple. "How long have I been asleep?" she asked, attempting to smooth her disheveled hair. "Long enough," Elias replied, offering her a tin cup of coffee. "How's the head?" Lily touched her temple gingerly. "Better than yesterday. My arm still aches, though," Elias nodded. "Likely sprained, not broken. We can fashion a sling from my spare shirt." As he tended to her arm, Elias found himself uncomfortably aware of her proximity, the faint floral scent that clung to her despite her ordeal, so out of place in this harsh landscape. He cleared his throat. "Miss Harrington, I don't mean to pry, but if I'm riding into trouble, I ought to know what kind." Lily's violet eyes met his, assessing. After a moment, she seemed to come to a decision. "I was traveling to Silver Creek to stop a wedding," she said quietly. "My sister, Amelia, is being forced to marry a man named Victor Blackwell." "Forced?" "Blackwell owns half the businesses in Silver Creek, including the bank that holds the mortgage on my family's ranch. When my father died 6 months ago, he left considerable debts. Blackwell offered to forgive them all if Amelia would marry him. And your sister agreed to this arrangement," Lily's expression hardened. "Amelia would do anything to save our home and protect our mother, but Blackwell is a monster. He's killed men for crossing him, though nothing's ever been proven." Elias frowned. "And you were on that train to stop the wedding." "Not just that," Lily said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I have proof of Blackwell's crimes documents that could send him to prison. That's why his men were on the train. They searched my compartment, found the documents, and decided you were better off dead," Elias finished grimly. "The wedding, when is it?" "Tomorrow afternoon." Elias whistled low. "That's cutting it close, Miss Harrington. Even pushing hard, we won't reach Silver Creek until tomorrow morning at the earliest." "Then we should get moving," Lily said, attempting to stand. Though she swayed slightly, her determination was evident in the set of her jaw. Elias admired her spirit, even as he worried about her condition. "We'll ride double," he decided. "Phantom's strong enough to carry us both, and you're in no condition to ride alone." Within minutes, they were mounted and heading west, Lily seated in front of Elias, her injured arm supported by the makeshift sling. The position required him to hold her close, one arm around her waist to steady her. It had been years since Elias had been this close to a woman, and he found himself uncomfortably aware of every bump in the trail that pressed her back against his chest. As they rode, Lily told him more about her family's ranch, the Triple H, named for Harrington and her father, a proud man who'd refused to accept help even as drought and bad investments drove him deeper into debt. "He was stubborn," she said, a note of fond exasperation in her voice. "Believed a man should solve his own problems." "Sounds like a man I would have respected," Elias commented. "And what about you, Mr. Dawson? You know my story now. It seems only fair I should know something of yours." Elias was silent for so long that Lily might have thought he hadn't heard, were it not for the slight tensing of the arm around her waist. "Not much to tell," he finally said. "Grew up in Texas, fought for the Confederacy, though I was barely old enough to hold a rifle. After the war, there wasn't much left to go home to, so I drifted. Worked cattle drives, broke horses, did some scouting for the Army. And what brings you to Wyoming territory?" Elias's voice cooled. "Like I said, I drift." Lily seemed to sense his reluctance and didn't press further. They rode in companionable silence, the rhythmic gait of the horse and the vast open landscape having an almost hypnotic effect. By midday, the sun beat down mercilessly. Elias guided Phantom toward a narrow creek lined with cottonwoods, the only shade visible for miles. "We'll rest here a while," he announced, helping Lily dismount. "Let Phantom drink and cool off." Lily sank gratefully onto the grass beside the creek, dipping her handkerchief in the cool water to press against her bruised temple. Elias removed Phantom's saddle, allowing the horse to drink and graze before joining her in the shade. From his saddlebags, he produced more jerky and hardtack. "It ain't much of a meal for a lady," he apologized. Lily smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, bringing a warmth to her eyes that made Elias's heart skip a beat. "After yesterday, Mr. Dawson, I'm grateful for any meal at all." As they ate, a comfortable silence settled between them. Elias found himself studying her profile, the graceful curve of her neck, the determined set of her chin. She was beautiful, certainly, but it was her courage that impressed him most. Thrown from a train, injured and alone in a hostile territory, yet her concern remained for her sister and mother. "You care deeply for your family," he observed. Lily nodded. "They're all I have. When Father died, I was teaching at a ladies' seminary in Denver. I came home immediately, of course, but by then, Amelia had already agreed to Blackwell's proposal." Her hands clenched in her lap. "I tried to convince her to break the engagement, but she refused. Said it was the only way to save the ranch and provide for Mother. And these documents you mentioned, Blackwell's former business partner was murdered last year. Before he died, he entrusted evidence to a lawyer in Denver, proof that Blackwell had embezzled from their company and arranged the deaths of 2 minors who discovered his scheme." Lily's voice hardened. "I obtained copies of those documents. They would not only see Blackwell imprisoned, but would invalidate any claim he has on our property. And now those documents are in the hands of Blackwell's men," Elias concluded grimly. "Yes," Lily admitted, "but they don't know that the Denver lawyer has the originals. If I can reach him in time, tell him what happened." "First things first," Elias said. "We get you to Silver Creek, stop that wedding, and ensure your family's safety. Then we can worry about bringing Blackwell to justice." Lily looked at him, something like hope kindling in her eyes. "We." Elias hadn't meant to include himself in her future plans, but now that he'd said it, he couldn't take it back. "Yes, madam, we." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, and Elias was the first to look away, suddenly very interested in adjusting his hat. "We should move on," he said gruffly, rising to his feet. "Still a lot of ground to cover before nightfall." As he helped her onto Phantom, Lily's hand lingered on his arm. "Thank you, Elias," she said softly, using his given name for the first time. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." "Best not to think on it," he replied, swinging up behind her. But as they continued their journey, Elias found himself thinking very much about what might have been and what might yet be. The afternoon stretched on, the landscape gradually changing from open plains to rolling hills dotted with pine and aspen. They were entering the foothills of the mountains now, and the trail grew steeper, forcing them to slow their pace. As dusk approached, Elias kept his eyes peeled for a suitable camping spot. A distant rumble of thunder warned of an approaching storm, and he was eager to find shelter before it hit. "There," he said, pointing to a rocky outcropping about half a mile ahead. "Looks like there might be a cave or at least an overhang where we can take cover." Lily, who had been dozing against his chest, straightened. "How much farther to Silver Creek?" "Another day's ride if the weather holds," Elias answered truthfully. "If not, could be longer." Worry creased Lily's brow. "The wedding is tomorrow afternoon." "I know," Elias assured her. "We'll make it." The cave turned out to be a shallow depression in the rock face, just deep enough to provide shelter from the rain but not much else. Elias quickly unsaddled Phantom, securing him beneath a nearby pine before helping Lily into their meager shelter. The first heavy raindrops began to fall as Elias attempted to start a fire with the dry brush he'd gathered. The wood was damp, though, and he cursed under his breath as the sparks from his flint refused to catch. "Here," Lily said, reaching into her boot and extracting a small metal case. Try this. Inside were several dry matches, a rare commodity in the wilderness. Elias raised an eyebrow, impressed. Resourceful? My father taught me never to travel unprepared, she explained with a hint of pride. Within minutes, a small but steady fire illuminated their shelter. The rain fell in earnest now, creating a curtain of water at the cave entrance. The temperature dropped rapidly, and Lily shivered despite the fire's warmth. Without a word, Elias removed his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders for the second time in as many days. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Elias felt that same jolt of awareness he'd experienced earlier. You'll freeze, Lily protested, though she clutched the coat gratefully. I've weathered worse, he assured her, though in truth, the cold was already seeping through his cotton shirt. Lily studied him in the flickering firelight, her expression thoughtful. You're a puzzle, Elias Dawson. You claim to be just a drifter, yet you risk your life to help a stranger. Elias poked at the fire, uncomfortable under her scrutiny. Like I said, some things need doing. It's more than that, Lily insisted. You could have left me at the first town we passed. You could have given me directions and ridden on, but you didn't. Elias remained silent, unsure how to respond. The truth was, he didn't fully understand his own actions. When he'd seen her fall from that train, something had compelled him to help, something stronger than caution or self-preservation. Tell me about Silver Creek, Lily said, changing the subject when it became clear he wouldn't elaborate. Have you been there before? Elias tensed. Once or twice. And he sighed, knowing she deserved at least a partial truth. It's a mining town, grew up around silver deposits discovered about 10 years back. Rough place like most boomtowns, but it's settling some. Has a church, a school, even a small theater. And Victor Blackwell owns half of it, according to my sister's letters. Elias nodded grimly. Men like Blackwell see opportunity in chaos. They build empires while others are still pitching tents. You sound like you've known men like him before, Lily observed. I've known my share, Elias admitted. Met them during the war, after it too, men who profit from others' suffering. Lightning flashed, momentarily illuminating the small cave. Thunder followed almost immediately, and Lily jumped, instinctively moving closer to Elias. Sorry, she murmured, embarrassed by her reaction. No need to apologize, Elias said softly. They were sitting side by side now, shoulders almost touching. He could feel the warmth of her through his coat, smell that faint floral scent that clung to her hair. My mother used to say thunder was just the angels rearranging furniture in heaven, Lily said, a small smile playing at her lips. It never scared me as a child, thinking of it that way. My pa said it was the devil beating his wife, Elias responded. Different perspective, I suppose. Lily laughed, the sound musical in the confined space. Quite different. Another crash of thunder, louder than the first, and this time Lily didn't jump. Instead, she leaned slightly against Elias's shoulder, the contact brief but unmistakable. We should try to get some sleep, Elias suggested, his voice rougher than he intended. Dawn comes early, and we've got a hard ride ahead, Lily nodded, settling down on the hard ground with his coat as both blanket and pillow. Elias remained sitting, his back against the rock wall, eyes fixed on the entrance to their shelter. You're not sleeping? Lily asked, stifling a yawn. Someone needs to keep watch, he replied. Get some rest. Lily seemed about to argue, but then thought better of it. Good night, Elias, she murmured instead. Good night, Lily, he responded, allowing himself the familiarity of her given name for the first time. Long after her breathing had evened out in sleep, Elias remained awake, listening to the storm rage outside. His thoughts were as turbulent as the weather, cycling between concern for their journey ahead and an increasing awareness of the woman sleeping beside him. He'd spent years avoiding attachments, drifting from place to place, taking odd jobs that required little conversation and even less commitment. Yet in the span of a day, this woman had somehow breached defenses he'd thought impenetrable. Tomorrow they would reach Silver Creek, and Lily would reunite with her family. She would stop her sister's wedding, confront Blackwell, and eventually return to her teaching position in Denver. And Elias would move on, as he always did. The thought left a hollow feeling in his chest when he wasn't ready to examine too closely. Instead, he fed another branch to the fire and settled in for his long vigil, watching over Lily as she slept. Dawn broke with surprising clarity after the night's storm. The air felt washed clean and sunlight glinted off rain-soaked rocks and vegetation. Elias, who had dozed intermittently throughout the night, was already awake when Lily stirred. "Morning," he greeted her, offering a cup of coffee. He'd managed to coax the fire back to life and brew a fresh pot while she slept. Lily sat up, wincing slightly as she stretched her injured arm. The makeshift sling had shifted during the night, and Elias moved to adjust it, his fingers gentle as they brushed against her shoulder. "How's the arm feeling?" he asked, his face close to hers as he secured the knot. "Better," Lily replied, though her slight grimace suggested otherwise. "How far to Silver Creek?" "If we push hard, we can be there by midday," Elias estimated, moving away to pack up their meager camp. The trail's steep in places, but the rain should have settled the dust, make for easier breathing. They ate a quick breakfast of coffee and the last of Elias's provisions before mounting Phantom. The stallion seemed eager to move after the night's confinement, dancing sideways as Elias swung into the saddle behind Lily. The morning passed in steady progress, the trail winding ever upward through pine forests and across rocky streams swollen with rainwater. Elias kept Phantom at a steady pace, mindful of the horse's stamina and Lily's injuries. They spoke little, each lost in thought about what awaited them in Silver Creek. As the sun climbed higher, the landscape began to change, with evidence of mining operations appearing clear-cut hillsides, abandoned equipment, and the occasional dilapidated shack. "Blackwell's mines?" Lily asked, noting Elias's grim expression as they passed a particularly devastated area. "Some of them," he confirmed. "Silver booms mostly played out now, but there's still enough to make it profitable for men with the right connections." Around midday, they crested a ridge, and the town of Silver Creek spread before them in the valley below a collection of wooden buildings clustered around a main street, with a white church steeple rising prominently at one end. Beyond the town lay rolling ranchland, and Lily pointed to a distant property nestled against the foothills. "That's the Triple H," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "Home." Elias studied the ranch through narrowed eyes. Even from this distance, he could see it had seen better days. The barn needed paint, and several fence sections appeared to be down. "Blackwell's been neglecting basic repairs," Lily explained bitterly, following his gaze. "Why maintain what you'll soon own outright?" They descended into the valley, the trail widening into a proper road as they approached town. Elias felt tension coiling in his gut, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. If Blackwell's men had returned from the train, they'd be watching for Lily. "We should avoid the main street," he decided, guiding Phantom toward a side path that skirted the eastern edge of town. "Where would your sister be now?" "At home, I expect," Lily replied. "The wedding isn't until 4 o'clock, according to her last letter." Elias checked the position of the sun. "That gives us about 3 hours. We'll head straight for your ranch." As they approached the Triple H, Elias's unease grew. The property was too quiet. No hands working the corrals, no smoke from the chimney despite the cool mountain air. "Something's wrong," Lily whispered, evidently sharing his concern. They approached cautiously, Elias's hand resting on his revolver. The main house was a substantial 2-story structure built of local timber, with a wide porch wrapping around the front. In better days, it must have been impressive. Now it had an air of neglect with peeling paint and a sagging step. Elias helped Lily dismount, then secured Phantom to a hitching post. "Stay behind me," he instructed, drawing his revolver. They had barely reached the porch when the front door flew open, and a woman who could only be Lily's sister burst out, her face pale with shock. "Lily," she gasped, rushing forward. "Oh my God, we thought they said Amelia." Lily embraced her sister, wincing as her injured arm was jostled. "What happened? Where's Mother?" Amelia pulled back, noticing Lily's injuries for the first time. Her gaze flickered to Elias, standing watchful on the steps, gun still in hand. Mother's at the church helping prepare for the... Her voice trailed off. Lily, they told us you were dead. Victor's men returned yesterday, said there had been an accident on the train. Lily's face hardened. It was no accident. They searched my bags, found the documents, and threw me from the train. Amelia's hand flew to her mouth. They tried to kill you, and would have succeeded if not for Mr. Dawson, Lily said, gesturing to Elias. Amelia turned to him, gratitude warring with suspicion in her expression. You saved my sister. Elias holstered his weapon, uncomfortable with her scrutiny. Found her by the tracks is all, brought her the rest of the way. He's being modest, Lily interjected. He risked his life to help me, Amelia, and now we need to move quickly. The wedding is still happening, Amelia confirmed, her voice resigned. Victor was insistent even after the news about you. Said it would be a fitting tribute to honor your memory by proceeding as planned. Convenient, Elias muttered. But now that you're here, Amelia continued, hope brightening her features, and alive, nothing changes, came a new voice from inside the house. A man stepped onto the porch, his expensive suit and polished boots marking him as out of place on a working ranch. He was in his 40s, handsome in a hard way, with cold eyes that assessed Lily and Elias with calculated interest. Victor, Amelia said, her posture immediately stiffening. Blackwell smiled, though the expression didn't reach his eyes. Lily, what a miraculous recovery. My men reported that you had fallen from the train in a most unfortunate accident. Your men pushed me, Lily retorted, stepping forward despite Elias's warning hand on her arm. After they stole documents that prove you murdered your business partner and 2 minors. Blackwell's smile didn't waver. Serious accusations from a woman who just survived a traumatic head injury. You're clearly confused. I'm thinking quite clearly, Lily insisted. Clear enough to know that this wedding isn't going to happen. Blackwell's gaze shifted to Elias, taking in his trail-worn appearance and the revolver at his hip. And who might this be? Another of your misguided attempts to interfere in matters that don't concern you. Before Lily could answer, Elias stepped forward. Name's Dawson, found Miss Harrington by the tracks, brought her home. Recognition flickered in Blackwell's eyes. Dawson, not Elias Dawson. Elias tensed, his hand hovering near his weapon. That's right. Blackwell laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Well, this is interesting. The notorious Elias Dawson wanted for murder in 3 territories, including this one, and here you are, delivering yourself right to my doorstep. Lily turned to Elias, confusion and the first hint of betrayal in her eyes. Elias, it's not what you think, Elias said, his eyes never leaving Blackwell. The man I killed deserved it, and any court that heard the full story would agree. Unfortunately for you, Blackwell continued smoothly, you won't be seeing the inside of a courtroom. Sheriff Matthews is a close personal friend, and when I tell him the notorious Dawson attacked me on my wedding day, he shrugged. Well, no one will question if you're brought in dead rather than alive. In one fluid motion, Blackwell drew a small derringer from his jacket pocket, aiming it directly at Elias. No, Lily cried, lunging forward. Everything happened at once. Elias shoved Lily aside as Blackwell fired. The bullet grazed Elias's left arm, tearing through his shirt sleeve. Amelia screamed, and from the side of the house, 2 ranch hands appeared, both armed with rifles. Take them inside, Blackwell ordered the men. The wedding proceeds as planned. Miss Lily can join us at the church to witness her sister's nuptials, and afterward, Mr. Dawson will have an unfortunate encounter with the sheriff. The ranch hands advanced, their rifles trained on Elias and Lily. With Blackwell's derringer still pointed at him and 2 rifles backing it up, Elias knew they were outgunned. Slowly, he raised his hands. Smart move, Dawson, Blackwell said with a smirk. Now, let's all go inside and discuss this civilized. Once inside the house, the ranch hands confiscated Elias's revolver and bound his hands behind his back. Lily and Amelia were directed to sit on a sofa in the parlor, while Elias was forced into a straight-backed chair opposite them. Blackwell paced before them, twirling Elias's revolver casually. I must say, this is an unexpected complication, but nothing that can't be managed. Victor, please, Amelia pleaded. There's no need for violence. Now that Lily's alive, Blackwell interrupted. She remains a threat to my plans. Those documents she mentioned, forgeries, of course, but troublesome nonetheless, and as for her rescuer. He turned to Elias. Judge Holloway's son-in-law, wasn't he? The man you killed. Elias's jaw tightened. He was beating his wife, the judge's daughter. I stepped in. He drew on me first. A convenient story, Blackwell replied. Unfortunately for you, Judge Holloway's influence extends throughout the territory. His version of events is the one that matters, and he's offering a substantial reward for your capture. Lily looked between the two men, comprehension dawning in her eyes. That's why you were reluctant to come to Silver Creek, she said to Elias. You're a wanted man here. Elias met her gaze steadily. I didn't lie to you, Lily, just didn't tell the whole truth. Blackwell checked his pocket watch. As fascinating as this is, we have a schedule to keep. The wedding is in 2 hours and the bride needs to prepare, he gestured to Amelia. Go upstairs and change. Jenkins will escort you to ensure you don't get any ideas about escaping. Amelia rose, her face pale but composed. And if I refuse, Blackwell's smile was cold. Then I'll have Mr. Dawson shot right here and your sister can join him shortly after. Your choice, my dear. With a last desperate look at Lily, Amelia allowed one of the ranch hands to lead her upstairs. As for you two, Blackwell continued, turning to Lily and Elias, you'll remain here under guard until the ceremony. Afterward, we'll deal with the matter of those missing documents and Mr. Dawson's unfortunate demise. He strode from the room, leaving the remaining ranch hand to guard them. The man positioned himself by the door, rifle ready, his expression suggesting he'd have no qualms about using it. Once Blackwell was out of earshot, Lily shifted closer to Elias on the pretext of examining his wounded arm. I'm sorry, she whispered. I've dragged you into my troubles and now you're facing a hangman's noose. Not your fault, Elias murmured back. I made my choice when I picked you up by those tracks. Lily's eyes softened. A choice I'm grateful for despite where it's led us. Her fingers brushed his bound wrists. We need a plan. Elias nodded slightly, his eyes flicking to the guard. When they move us to the church, that's our best chance. The hours crawled by, tension thick in the air. Eventually, Amelia returned downstairs, dressed in a simple white gown, her face a mask of resignation. Lily gasped at the sight of her sister, tears welling in her eyes. Don't, Amelia whispered, embracing Lily. I'm doing this for you and Mother, it's the only way. Blackwell reappeared, now dressed in a formal black suit. Touching, he commented dryly. Now, shall we proceed to the church? I'd hate to keep the good Reverend waiting. Under the watchful eyes of Blackwell and his men, they were escorted outside to where a carriage waited. Elias, his hands still bound, was forced to ride alongside one of the ranch hands while the sisters and Blackwell took the carriage. The journey into town was tense and silent. Elias's mind raced, looking for any opportunity to escape or at least to create a diversion that would allow Lily and Amelia to get away. But with his hands bound and a rifle trained on him, options were limited. Silver Creek's main street was busier than Elias remembered, with townspeople gathered in small groups, many dressed in their Sunday best. News of the wedding had clearly spread, and it seemed half the town planned to attend. The church stood at the far end of the street, its white steeple gleaming in the afternoon sun. As they approached, Elias noted several men loitering outside more of Blackwell's hired guns, no doubt. The carriage stopped before the church steps, and Blackwell emerged, offering his hand to assist Amelia. Lily followed, her eyes immediately seeking Elias as he was roughly dismounted from his horse. Remember, Blackwell murmured as they climbed the steps, any disruption, any attempt to stop this ceremony, and Dawson dies on the spot. Is that clear? Both sisters nodded, though Lily's eyes burned with defiance. Elias, for his part, maintained a stoic expression, even as the ranch hand shoved him forward. The church interior was cool and dim after the bright sunlight outside. Pews had been decorated with white ribbons and wildflowers, and several oil lamps cast a warm glow over the assembled guests. At the altar stood a thin, nervous-looking minister clutching a Bible to his chest. Elias was directed to a pew near the back, flanked by his guard. Lily was seated across the aisle while Amelia and Blackwell continued toward the altar. An older woman, presumably the sister's mother, sat in the front pew, her expression a mixture of sorrow and resignation. As the minister began the ceremony, Elias subtly tested his bonds. The rope was tight, cutting into his wrists, but he thought he detected a slight give. If he could work it loose. His attention was drawn to Lily, who was staring fixedly at something or someone near the church entrance. Following her gaze, Elias spotted a man in a dusty travel coat slipping quietly into the back pew. There was something familiar about him, though Elias couldn't place where he might have seen him before. The ceremony progressed, the minister's voice echoing in the hushed church. When he reached the traditional "speak now or forever hold your peace," Elias tensed, half expecting Lily to stand despite Blackwell's threats. But she remained seated, though her hands were clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles showed white. Then, the minister continued, "By the power vested in me, I object," came a clear, authoritative voice from the back of the church. All heads turned. The man in the travel coat stood, now holding a badge that glinted in the lamplight. Federal Marshal Daniel Cooper. "This wedding cannot proceed." Blackwell's face contorted with fury. "What is the meaning of this?" The marshal strode forward, nodding briefly to Lily as he passed. "Victor Blackwell, you're under arrest for the murders of George Patterson, Thomas Reynolds, and Samuel Blake, as well as for embezzlement, extortion, and attempted murder." A murmur rippled through the congregation. Blackwell's hand moved toward his jacket, but the marshal was faster, his revolver already drawn. "I wouldn't," he warned. Taking advantage of the distraction, Elias managed to work one hand free from his bonds. His guard's attention was fully on the confrontation at the altar, giving Elias the opportunity to deliver a sharp elbow to the man's ribs, followed by a blow to the jaw that sent him crashing into the pew. Chaos erupted. Blackwell's men reached for their weapons, but the church doors burst open, revealing several armed deputies. Blackwell himself lunged toward Amelia, grabbing her arm and pulling her in front of him as a shield. "Back off, Marshal," he snarled, producing his derringer once more and pressing it to Amelia's temple, "or the bride dies right here." The marshal held his ground, his revolver still aimed at Blackwell. "It's over, Victor. Those documents Lily obtained. They reached my office 2 days ago, along with sworn statements from witnesses who saw you murder your partner." Lily stood, her voice clear despite the tension. "I sent copies to the marshal's office before I boarded the train. Even if your men had succeeded in killing me, the evidence was already beyond your reach." Blackwell's face twisted with rage. He shoved Amelia aside and aimed his derringer at Lily. Elias, now completely free of his bonds, didn't hesitate. He launched himself across the aisle, tackling Lily to the ground as Blackwell fired. The bullet splintered the pew where she had been standing moments before. Before Blackwell could fire again, the marshal's shot rang out. Blackwell staggered, the derringer falling from his grip as he clutched his shoulder. 2 deputies rushed forward, disarming and restraining him despite his pained protests. In the aftermath, Elias helped Lily to her feet, his hands gentle as they checked her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, her eyes wide with adrenaline and relief. "You saved my life, again." "Getting to be a habit," he replied with a wry smile. The marshal approached, holstering his weapon. "Miss Harrington, your timing with those documents couldn't have been better. We've been building a case against Blackwell for months, but lacked solid evidence until now." Lily introduced Elias, who eyed the marshal warily, aware that his own wanted status could still result in arrest. To his surprise, the marshal extended a hand. "Elias Dawson. Heard about your situation with Judge Holloway. For what it's worth, I always thought there was more to that story than the judge let on." Elias accepted the handshake cautiously. "Doesn't change the fact that I'm still wanted." The marshal smiled slightly. "Actually, it might." Judge Holloway's daughter finally came forward last month, testified that her husband was abusive and that you intervened to save her life. The judge was forced to withdraw his accusations. There's still some paperwork to clear up, but you're essentially a free man, Dawson. The news hit Elias like a physical blow. 3 years of living as a fugitive, always looking over his shoulder, and now freedom. He felt Lily's hand slip into his, warm and reassuring. "That's wonderful news," she said, her violet eyes bright with genuine happiness for him. Amelia joined them, still in her wedding dress but with considerably more color in her cheeks now that Blackwell was in custody. "It seems I'm not getting married today after all," she said, with what sounded suspiciously like relief. Their mother approached, embracing Lily with tears streaming down her face. "When they told us you were dead, oh, my darling girl." As the Harrington family reunited, Elias stepped back, suddenly feeling like an intruder in their private moment. The marshal noticed his withdrawal and moved closer. "What will you do now, Dawson?" Still planning to drift, Elias's eyes found Lily, surrounded by her family yet somehow still aware of him, her gaze meeting his across the church. "Don't know," he answered honestly. "For the first time in years, I've got choices." The marshal nodded, understanding. "Well, if you're looking for honest work, I could use a deputy with your tracking skills and steady hand. Think about it." As the church emptied, Blackwell and his men led away in chains. Elias found himself alone with his thoughts. Freedom was a foreign concept after so long on the run. He could go anywhere, do anything. The possibilities were both exhilarating and overwhelming. A soft voice interrupted his contemplation. "You're thinking of leaving, aren't you?" Lily stood before him, having changed from her torn traveling dress into a simple blue gown borrowed from her sister. With her chestnut hair arranged neatly and the worst of her bruises hidden, she looked every inch the refined lady she was, worlds apart from the rough cowboy who'd found her by the tracks. "It's what I do," Elias replied, though the words lacked conviction. "Move on," Lily stepped closer. "And if I asked you to stay?" The question hung between them, laden with implications neither was quite ready to voice. Elias studied her face, searching for any hint of uncertainty or obligation. "Why would you ask that?" he countered softly. "Because in 2 days, you've shown me more kindness and courage than most men demonstrate in a lifetime," Lily answered without hesitation. "Because you risked your life for a stranger, asked for nothing in return, and never once made me feel anything less than safe, despite your own troubled past." Elias looked away, uncomfortable with her praise. "I just did what needed doing." "No," Lily insisted, her hand coming to rest lightly on his arm. "You did far more than that. You gave me hope when I had none, strength when mine faltered, and I think perhaps I've come to care for you more than I should, given our brief acquaintance." The admission, so honestly spoken, caught Elias off guard. He'd felt the connection between them growing, of course the shared glances, the easy companionship that had developed despite their dire circumstances. But he'd attributed it to the intensity of their situation, never allowing himself to consider it might be something more lasting. "Lily," he began, uncertain how to proceed. "I'm not the kind of man a woman like you should tie herself to. I've spent years running, living by my wits and my gun, don't know much about settling down, building a life." "I'm not asking for promises," Lily clarified, "just time. Time to see if what I feel, what I think we both feel, is real or simply the product of extraordinary circumstances." Hope, an emotion Elias had almost forgotten, flickered to life in his chest. "And if it's real," Lily smiled, the same transformative smile that had caught his breath by the creek. "Then we face that challenge together, as we've faced everything else since you found me by those tracks." Elias took her hand, his calloused fingers engulfing her smaller ones. "I reckon I could stay a while, see about fixing up that ranch of yours. Marshall offered me a deputy position too if I want it." "And do you want it, that is?" Elias considered the question seriously. "Might be good to stand on the right side of the law for a change. Use what I know to help folks instead of hiding from my past." Lily's eyes shone with approval and something warmer. "I think you'd make an excellent deputy, Elias Dawson." Before he could respond, they were interrupted by Amelia and Mrs. Harrington, who approached with the marshal. "Lily, dear," Mrs. Harrington began, "the marshal has explained everything. I can't believe what you went through to protect us from that awful man." Her gaze shifted to Elias, gratitude evident in her expression. "And you, Mr. Dawson, we owe you a debt we can never repay." Elias shifted uncomfortably. "No debt, madam, just glad I was in the right place at the right time." The marshal cleared his throat. "Mrs. Harrington, I've been explaining that with Blackwell's arrest, all claims against your property will be invalidated. The ranch is yours, free and clear." Relief washed over the older woman's face. "Thank God. This land has been in my husband's family for 3 generations. Losing it would have broken his heart." "Speaking of the ranch," Amelia interjected, a knowing glint in her eye as she observed Lily's hand still clasped in Elias's, "we could use someone with Mr. Dawson's experience to help get things back in working order. The place has suffered under Blackwell's neglect." Lily looked at Elias, a question in her eyes. He squeezed her hand gently. "I'd be honored to help if you'll have me," Mrs. Harrington beamed. "Wonderful. You must stay with us, of course. We have plenty of room, and after what you've done for our family, it's the least we can offer." And so, as the sun set on Silver Creek, casting long shadows across the main street, Elias Dawson found himself riding toward the Triple H Ranch alongside the Harrington women, his future suddenly as wide open as the Wyoming sky above them. The days that followed took on a rhythm unlike any Elias had known before. Mornings began early at the Triple H, with chores and repairs that had been neglected during Blackwell's campaign of intimidation. Elias threw himself into the work, finding satisfaction in mending fences, repairing the barn roof, and breaking new horses for the depleted herd. Word of his role in Blackwell's downfall spread quickly through Silver Creek, transforming him from suspicious stranger to local hero almost overnight. When he walked down the main street to meet with Marshal Cooper about the deputy position, shopkeepers nodded respectfully, and women who might once have crossed to the other side now smiled and greeted him by name. It was a strange sensation for a man who'd spent years avoiding notice. The marshal's offer turned out to be more substantial than Elias had initially thought, not just a deputy position, but eventually the chance to become town marshal himself. When Cooper moved on to a federal judgeship, he'd been offered in Denver. "Town's growing," Cooper explained as they toured the small jailhouse. "Needs a steady hand, someone who understands trouble before it starts. You've got the experience, Dawson, and now you've got the clean slate to go with it." Elias accepted the badge with a sense of irony not lost on either of them, the wanted man now sworn to uphold the law. His duties were part-time at first, allowing him to continue helping at the Triple H while learning the complexities of his new role. Through it all, Lily was a constant presence, her practical intelligence and quiet strength a perfect complement to his more taciturn nature. They settled into an easy companionship, working side by side on the ranch during the day and often spending evenings on the porch, talking as the sun set behind the mountains. Elias found himself sharing stories he'd never told another soul about his childhood in Texas, his disillusioning experiences during the war, the years of drifting that followed. Lily, in turn, told him of her life teaching at the ladies' seminary, her dreams of someday opening a school in Silver Creek, her complex relationship with her father, whose pride had ultimately led the family to the brink of ruin. 6 weeks after the events at the church, Elias was replacing rotten boards on the ranch house porch when Lily brought him a glass of lemonade, sitting beside him on the steps as he took a break. "I received a letter from the seminary today," she said, smoothing her skirt. "They've offered me my position back for the fall term." Elias felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "Denver's a fine city," he said carefully, keeping his voice neutral. "Good opportunity for you." Lily studied his profile. "It is," she agreed, "but I've decided to decline." Elias turned to her, surprise evident in his expression. "Why would you do that? Teaching's your calling, you said so yourself." "It is," Lily confirmed with a smile. "Which is why I've spoken with Reverend Phillips about using the church for classes until Silver Creek can build a proper school." The town has enough children now to warrant a teacher, and the Reverend agrees it's long overdue. Hope flared in Elias's chest. You're staying, then? I am, Lily said simply. My family is here, and so, I believe, is my future. Her eyes met his, the implication clear. Elias set down his glass, suddenly certain of what he wanted in a way he'd never been before. Lily, I'm not a man of fancy words, never have been, but these weeks with you, they've shown me what I've been missing all these years of drifting. He took her hand, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. I can't offer you much, got my deputy's pay, some savings, and whatever future I can build here. It might not be the life you imagined for yourself. It's exactly the life I want, Lily interrupted softly. With exactly the man I want. Elias's heart hammered in his chest. Are you saying? I'm saying, Lily continued, her violet eyes bright with certainty, that I love you, Elias Dawson. I think I began falling in love with you the moment you found me by those tracks and said you'd take me the rest of the way. Elias cupped her face gently, his calloused hand a contrast to her smooth skin. I love you too, Lily Harrington. Have for a while now, just didn't know how to say it. Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle exploration that quickly deepened into something more profound. When they finally parted, Elias rested his forehead against hers, a sense of peace settling over him that he'd never known before. Marry me, he whispered, the words more plea than question. Lily's answer was another kiss, this one filled with promise and certainty. They were married in the same church where, 2 months earlier, they had faced down Blackwell at gunpoint. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, least of all the beaming Reverend Phillips, who remarked during the ceremony that the Lord indeed worked in mysterious ways. Amelia stood as Lily's maid of honor, while Marshal Cooper served as Elias's best man. The church was filled with townspeople, many of whom Elias now knew by name, the blacksmith, whose daughter was one of Lily's first pupils, the storekeeper who extended credit to the Harrington family during their financial troubles, the young cowhand from the neighboring ranch who brought news of strays with suspicious Triple H brands. As Lily walked down the aisle in a gown of ivory silk, far simpler than the one Blackwell had forced upon Amelia, but infinitely more beautiful for the joy of the woman wearing it, Elias felt a sense of wonder that his life had led him to this moment. From Confederate soldier to drifter to wanted man to deputy, and now, incredibly, to husband. The Reverend's words washed over him, familiar phrases given new meaning by the woman standing before him. When it came time for vows, Elias spoke from the heart, his normally reserved nature giving way to the depth of his feelings. Lily, when I found you by those tracks, I told you I'd take you the rest of the way. What I didn't know then was that the rest of the way would turn out to be the rest of our lives. I promise to walk beside you through whatever comes, to protect you not because you need protecting, but because it's my privilege to do so, and to love you with everything I am for as long as I draw breath. Tears shimmered in Lily's eyes as she responded with her own vows, her clear voice carrying to the rafters of the small church. Elias, you came into my life when I was at my most vulnerable, yet you never made me feel weak. You showed me that strength isn't about facing hardship alone, but about finding someone who makes the journey worthwhile. I promise to be that person for you, your partner, your friend, your home when the world seems cold, and your greatest advocate in all things. I will love you completely, honestly, and eternally. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared was a sealing of promises already kept and those yet to be fulfilled. The celebration afterward was held at the Triple H, the ranch house and yard transformed by lanterns, wildflowers, and tables laden with food contributed by seemingly every household in Silver Creek. A fiddler and banjo player provided music, and as the evening progressed, the yard became an impromptu dance floor. Elias, who had never been much for dancing, found himself willingly led by his new wife through a Virginia reel and several waltzes. The happiness on Lily's face made his initial awkwardness worthwhile, and by the third dance he was moving with surprising confidence. Deputy Dawson, Lily teased as they whirled beneath the stars, it seems you've been hiding talents from me. Elias pulled her closer than was strictly proper for a public dance. "Mrs. Dawson," he countered, savoring the sound of her new name, "I suspect we'll be discovering new talents in each other for years to come." The blush that colored her cheeks suggested she understood his meaning perfectly. Later, after the last guests had departed and the ranch house had grown quiet, Elias stood on the porch, gazing at the stars scattered like diamond dust across the Wyoming sky. The same stars he'd observed countless times during lonely nights on the trail now seemed to shine with new purpose. Soft footsteps announced Lily's presence before her arms slipped around his waist from behind. "What are you thinking about, husband?" she asked, resting her head against his back. Elias turned, gathering her into his embrace. "About how differently things might have gone if I hadn't been riding near those tracks that day. If I'd been a mile away in either direction, I'd never have seen you fall." "But you were there," Lily reminded him, "just where you needed to be." "Just where I needed to be," Elias agreed, kissing her forehead. "Seems like that's where I am now, too." Lily smiled up at him, her eyes reflecting starlight. "Welcome home, Elias Dawson." And as he led his bride inside, Elias knew with absolute certainty that after years of drifting, he had indeed found his way home. 5 years later, the schoolhouse bell rang, signaling the end of the day's lessons. Children spilled from the white clapboard, building like water over stones, their voices carrying across the town square in a cacophony of laughter and shouted farewells. Lily Dawson stood in the doorway, one hand resting protectively on her swollen belly as she watched her pupils disperse. At 30, with 5 years of marriage behind her and their second child due in less than a month, she had never been happier. Silver Creek had grown in those 5 years, transitioning from rough mining town to respectable community. The school where Lily taught was evidence of that growth, a proper building with glass windows and individual desks, funded by town taxes and donations from prosperous citizens. "Mrs. Dawson." A small voice drew her attention downward, where 8-year-old Emma Carter stood clutching a wildflower bouquet. "These are for you and the baby." Lily accepted the flowers with a warm smile. "Thank you, Emma, they're beautiful." "Pa says the baby will come when the aspens turn gold," Emma continued seriously. "Is that true?" "Your pa might be right," Lily laughed. "Babies tend to arrive on their own schedules, but autumn does seem to be a favorite time in our family." As Emma skipped away to join her waiting father, Lily caught sight of a familiar figure crossing the square. Even after 5 years, the sight of Elias still made her heart beat faster. He cut an impressive figure in his marshal's coat, the silver star on his chest catching the afternoon sunlight. At 35, with strands of silver beginning to appear at his temples, Elias had grown into his role as Silver Creek's keeper of the peace with natural authority. The townsfolk respected him not only for his fairness, but for the quiet dignity with which he carried out his duties. When Marshal Cooper had finally departed for his judgeship in Denver 3 years earlier, the town council had unanimously appointed Elias to take his place. Under his watch, Silver Creek had become known as a place where the law was applied equally to all, a rarity in many frontier communities. "Afternoon, Mrs. Marshall," Elias greeted her, tipping his hat with exaggerated formality that made her smile. "Need an escort home?" "I would be delighted, Marshal Dawson," Lily replied, matching his playful tone. She gathered her books and shawl, allowing Elias to carry them as they set off toward home. Their house, a modest but comfortable dwelling on the edge of town, had been a wedding gift from Mrs. Harrington, who now lived permanently at the Triple H with Amelia and her husband, a quiet, hard-working rancher from Colorado who had purchased the neighboring property. The two ranches had effectively merged operations, becoming one of the most successful cattle operations in the territory. "How's our son today?" Elias asked, his free hand coming to rest briefly on Lily's belly. "Active," Lily reported with a rueful smile. "And what makes you so certain it's a boy? We could have another daughter." Their firstborn, Sarah, now 3 years old, was the image of her mother with the same violet eyes and determined spirit. She spent her days divided between home and the ranch, where her grandmother and aunt doted on her shamelessly. Elias grinned. Just a feeling. And if I'm wrong, I'll happily stand corrected. As they walked, they exchanged news of their respective days, Lily's challenges with the new arithmetic lessons, Elias's successful mediation of a dispute between two merchants over a delivery of damaged goods. These daily conversations were the foundation of their marriage, a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's lives. They had discovered early on that they complemented each other perfectly, Lily's warmth and optimism balancing Elias's more reserved pragmatism. "Sarah's staying with your mother tonight," Elias confirmed as they approached their house. Lily nodded. "Amelia's taking her and the boys fishing tomorrow morning. She'll bring her home after lunch." The prospect of an evening alone, increasingly rare with a lively 3-year-old in the house, brought a gleam to Elias's eye. "Is that so?" "It is," Lily confirmed, a matching spark in her own expression. Despite her advanced pregnancy, or perhaps because of it, the connection between them had never been stronger. "I thought we might enjoy a quiet dinner, just the two of us." "Well, 3, she amended, patting her belly. Inside their home, Elias lit the lamps against the gathering dusk while Lily prepared a simple meal. They moved around each other with the easy familiarity of long-established patterns, occasionally touching a hand on a shoulder, a brush of fingers as dishes were passed. After dinner, they settled on the porch swing, a wedding gift from the town blacksmith. The evening air carried the first hint of autumn crispness, and Elias draped a blanket over Lily's legs before joining her. "Got a letter from the governor today," he said as they rocked gently, gazing at the first stars appearing above the mountains. "Offering me a position as territorial marshal." Lily turned to him, surprise evident in her expression. "Elias, that's wonderful, what an honor." "Would mean more traveling," he continued, watching her face carefully. "Covering the entire southeastern part of the territory, more responsibility, better pay, but less time at home," understanding dawned in Lily's eyes. "You're considering declining," Elias nodded slowly. "Been thinking about it all day. 5 years ago, that badge would have been all I wanted, validation, I suppose, that I'd finally come out from under the shadow of my past. And now," he took her hand, his thumb tracing the gold band on her finger, "now I measure success differently. Got a wife I love more each day, a daughter who thinks I hang the moon, another child on the way. Got a town that trusts me, neighbors who respect me." He shrugged. "Hard to see how a fancier title improves on that." Lily leaned against him, her head finding its familiar place on his shoulder. "Whatever you decide, I support you, you know that." "I do know," Elias affirmed, pressing a kiss to her hair. "It's one of the many reasons I love you." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness settled fully over Silver Creek. From somewhere in town came the faint sounds of a piano playing in the new hotel, and closer at hand, the rhythmic chirping of crickets in their garden. "You know," Lily said thoughtfully, "I was remembering this morning how we met. That moment when I opened my eyes and saw you kneeling beside me, dust on your hat and concern in your eyes." Elias chuckled. "As I recall, your first reaction was fear, not gratitude. Can you blame me? I'd just been thrown from a train by men who wanted me dead, and there you were, the very image of a dangerous desperado." "I was pretty rough around the edges," Elias admitted. Lily shifted to look at him, her expression serious now. "You were exactly what I needed, though I didn't know it then. Not just someone to rescue me, but someone who would see me as an equal, who would value my strength as much as I came to value yours." Elias cupped her cheek, overwhelmed as always by the depth of feeling she stirred in him. "You know, when I told you I'd take you the rest of the way, I was just thinking about getting you to Silver Creek. And now I know it meant something much bigger," he said softly. "The rest of the way means the rest of our lives, through whatever comes, good or bad, easy or hard." Lily's eyes glistened in the dim light from the window. "I wouldn't want to make that journey with anyone else." As Elias bent to kiss her, the baby kicked, causing them both to laugh. "Seems someone agrees," Lily said, placing Elias's hand over the spot where their child made its presence known. Elias marveled at the movement beneath his palm, still awed by the miracle of it despite having experienced it once before. "Got your mama's spirit already," he observed, strong-willed and determined to be heard. "And your timing," Lily countered with a grin. Always making an entrance at the most dramatic moment. Life in the Wyoming territory was never easy. Winters were harsh, distances between settlements vast, and the work of building a community never-ending. But as Elias sat with his wife on their porch, their child moving beneath his hand and the stars wheeling overhead, he knew with bone-deep certainty that he'd found something most men spent lifetimes searching for. He'd found his purpose, his place, his peace. All because one fateful day he'd happened to be riding near those tracks when a woman needed him most. "I love you, Lily Dawson," he whispered against her hair. "And I love you, Elias Dawson," she replied, her voice carrying the same wonder it had the first time she'd spoken those words on the ranch house steps 5 years earlier. Today, tomorrow, and for all the days to come. The rest of the way, it turned out, was a journey without end, a path they would walk together for as long as they both drew breath, under the vast Wyoming sky that had witnessed their beginning and would watch over their forever.